So back again on dispelling some more fake news that's come out here. And this time it's done by Alberta Farmer Express, published an article. And I'm only doing this because it seems like the same group of people, the Responsible Grain group, are desperately vying to convince people that this is good through whatever avenue. So I'm going to read the article and just go through it real quick. It's fairly short. Anyway, so it says, proposed grain code suddenly getting noticed. Or, it should say something more along the lines of people get caught trying to change the grain code on farmers without them knowing. So, a new proposed grain code of practice, its conduct, has left some Alberta growers scratching their heads about where it came from, who's behind it, and why they haven't heard about it until now. Which makes sense, but that's not for lack of trying on the part of the group who developed the draft Responsible Grain Code of Practice. And here's the first quote. "Those farmers can't tell me that they haven't had a chance to know about it," said Bentley area farmer Jason Lenz, who was involved in developing the code. And he continues, he says, "You know you're not going to get every farmer, but any farmer who's actively farming should be dialed into whatever their provincial crop commissions are doing. They've known about this for a year now." So let's go over this. Jason Lenz is on the board developing the code, and it lists him as a farmer. So he'd be one of the farmers that, they got us for some wholesome farmers to give their input on. Except that's not true at all. Why? Well, because Jason Lenz is also the chair of Alberta Barley. He's also a director on Alberta Wheat, and he's a director at the Canadian Grains Council. So here's someone that's scolding farmers, basically, if you're an active farmer and you don't know about this, are you really an active farmer? Do you even farm? He's trying to make the farmer. And meanwhile, when did he tweet about this for the first time? Well, he retweeted it on November 11th, on Remembrance Day. Now let's look at your provincial councils that he serves on. Well, let's see. The Alberta Barley never made a tweet, retweeted on November 26th. Alberta Wheat retweeted on November 26th. Well, they had a year. You remember him saying that? Yeah. Well, everybody had a year. It's stupid farmers. Are they asking their boards that I'm taking money from your money, check off fees, and money from the government, and blah, blah, blah. So it's the farmer's fault. Meanwhile, all these places only talked about it. What are you supposed to ask if you don't know about it? Are you supposed to be like, hey, you guys doing anything, suspicious? No. Who's asking? Well, I just thought I should, keep up, make sure you're not doing anything suspicious. No? You're supposed to trust these groups. And this trust is eroding faster than the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I don't know, these councils are showing their incompetence and uselessness, and they're all in a nice little club because everybody's serving as a director on one and another board, and they're all kind of, holding each other's hammers in the men's room together here. No offense to women, but you don't have a penis, and you never will. It's a good thing. So work on the code, which is voluntary. They say this is a voluntary code, so everybody's putting it in their free time. Began in late 2019. Nobody said anything then, and has been led by the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Crops, an 8-year-old organization made up of farm groups, major agribusiness companies, and industry organizations. Well, I could go into that and who's paying the bills there, but it's all the same group. Don't even have to bother. I've looked into it. So this voluntary group somehow, in their hearts wanted to help Canadian agriculture. And You know, they got $789,558 from the taxpayer via the federal government's agriculture. So they received 800,000, and then industry kicks in 25% on top of it. You know, so they got over $1 million for a voluntary program. Where'd that money go? Because we all know it didn't go into fucking marketing, because it's absolutely awful. You know, and these guys, they have Twitter accounts with no followers at all. And there's no spend on advertising, because if they wanted you to know, they would spend on advertising. They don't have Facebook, they don't have Instagram, they don't have TikTok, they don't have any of these. These are businesses. They're not for profits. It's like anything. It's like Unifor. Like, it's a union, but it's a business. They're telling everybody to vote a certain way, to do things a certain way. It's gotten so corrupt, it's untrustable. They're all untrustable. And all these people, all they do is lie over and over and over again. And we see that happening throughout. So if you're a farmer and you know you catch these guys lying, your neighbor lying all the time, you go, oh man, my neighbor, he just lies and lies and lies. Are you gonna go over to his house and go, hey man, can you just check up on my house when we've gone for a few weeks and, you know, feed my dogs, make sure nobody's, you know, rooting around my yard? You know, are you gonna ask him that? Never. There's no chance, because you don't trust that guy. All of these people in this group have lost all trust. With it, respect. I think respect. I don't have respect for these people, what they're trying to do. Yeah, are any of these guys just farmers? None of them are. Are any of these people paid by just their hard work from their own hand? None of them. None of them are just paid like that. So whoever's paying them is got the hand up the ass and moving their mouth. So I don't trust any of these people anyway. You can trust me if you want. You might know these guys outside and be like, oh, he's a really good guy. And he could be a good guy. I don't want this guy babysitting my kids or watching my yard when I'm not. That's all. I just don't trust them. I don't care to. They're not on the same page as what I think. You know, personal responsibility, freedom of choice, freedoms in general. That's what I like. That's what I think a society should move towards. These people don't. It's fine. Lots of communist countries they can move to. Okay. But in some quarters, the code only got noticed after the roundtable announced that the consultations would take place this winter. No, that is what happened. With some questioning whether it was being thrust on farmers and would one day become mandatory. And I went to the online meetings, like I said before, and the goal is to make it mandatory. They said in the meetings, the goal is to make it mandatory. So when they keep backpedaling on this, they made it mandatory. All they have to do to deny that is just they record every open round table, because they got to show it to their masters. They record every round table, release all the round tables, release them all. It's funny how a company, a group of people that want to market your grain better and control how you do it for marketing purposes, did the absolute worst job of marketing themselves. An absolute abysmal job of marketing themselves. It is probably the worst marketing job I have ever seen, ever, with the smallest dollars spent, because it's going to be zero, because they spent it all on themselves. These are the guys that want to market your grain for you, that can't get this out to anybody. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. And it's just so obvious. I say that all the time. This is so obvious. This is so dumb. I might have a little bit of a solution here, I think, because no matter what, they're going to try to push this through. They're going to do it one way or another, because the government loves to force people to do this, whatever their bidding is. But if you look at how stocks work, you know, like all these guys, stocks, government, everything, the power isn't in government. It never was. They just keep pushing this and doing this. The entire power is in the public and public pushback. Like I got a message from somebody on Instagram, and he was in on one of the meetings, and he said it's a bloodbath. These farmers are just relentless. And I was in on one too, and these guys are relentless, and they're not getting answers to any questions. It's like, you know, a page out of Trudeau. It's just deflection, and they'll never answer the questions. They're just gonna rephrase everything to make you buy into it. But the farmers are not happy about this, and rightfully so. So anyway, let's keep going. I'm sorry. So here we go. But the code is not burdensome and will remain voluntary and is only intended to show consumers and grain buyers that the sector produces grain in an environmentally responsible way, said Lenz. So you think China, that sent their army over here to train, that sent crayons, they sent crayons with asbestos in it before, the cups, the BPA and all this stuff in cups, the plastics, the toxins everywhere. You think these countries give a fuck what Canada's doing? And maybe Canada should set an example and ban a lot of these products coming out of China that are toxic and terrible. It's just like China doesn't give a shit what Canada does. They don't give a fuck. Saudi Arabia, all these Middle Eastern countries that are Islamist countries, they hate Westerners. They hate them. And the people that hate Westerners the most still buy the majority or a large portion of their grain. The Chinese Communist Party hates democracy. They still buy a shitload of their grain. So it doesn't fucking matter. These people don't give a shit. Be like, oh man, I'm glad that they wrote down that they didn't see the slew this year. Now, instead of killing the infidels, we can eat their germ. They don't do that. They don't give a fuck about Canada. They want to buy Canada. They buy the farmland, they buy the elevators, the G3, they buy all these companies. They don't give a shit about the farmers. They don't give a fuck. Neither does Responsible Grain. They don't give a fuck about the farmer. Stop giving a fuck about them. I don't give a fuck about them. We've been kind of preaching to the choir about how good a job we're doing. Who are we preaching to? He said, Canadian farmers are amongst the most sustainable in the world, but we don't have a tool that we can show people what we're doing. We're all being faced with that every year, whether it's our own relatives living in urban areas or activist groups that are questioning how our food is grown. So he puts our family, the importance of our family, on the same level as activists. Your family is as important as these eco-terrorists. Terrorists is what they are. They terrorize farmers. Look what they did to the Hutterites in Alberta. So this guy puts them on the same level. Oh, it's important to bend the knee to the activists. They're terrorists. We don't give a fuck about them. We do not care. Nobody gives a shit about these eco-terrorists. It's absolutely absurd. And then see who they're getting paid by, which has been well documented and open. The draft has 7 different sustainability modules, which range from nutrient management to on-farm health and wellness, covering practices that are sustainable, both environmentally and socially, said Susan Miller, Executive Director of the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Crops. Yeah, well, if anybody's read modules 6 and 7, it basically says that they're going to be able to dictate what part of your land you can seed with what. They want you to take soil tests, moisture tests before you plant. They want to limit the amount of work your workers can do, all your PPE all the time. They want muster points. They want everything written down. They want to see documents when you're cleaning out your grain cart, your trailers, your bins. It all has to be documented and written down. When people come on site, you got to do orientation. You have to make sure everybody has all the tickets that are going to be there. Oh, confined space. You're going to have all of these tickets. Okay, so it's on-farm health and wellness. Yeah, okay, so they want you to pay overtime. They want you to pay all these crazy benefits, all this continued training and all that. But they want to enforce it. Like a person should want. If you want to get better at your job, you should do those things yourself. I do those things myself. I've taken a lot of even courses online. There's lots of great places. The agriculture technology course. There's lots of stuff you can learn. It's unlimited. The internet. It's free too, actually, but I have paid for some. Here we go. By developing code that is reasonable and farmer-oriented, which it is not, it allows control for farmers and other industry stakeholders over how sustainability is defined. Sustainability is always defined the same. Sustainability means to exist. That's all sustainability means. It's the definition. Don't change the definition of sustainability. It's dumb. But I like how it says industry stakeholders can have control over this code. The people that developed it can have control over it. It allows actual demonstration by being able to say, These are the sustainable practices that are based in science and developed by a broad spectrum committee from the farming community. First of all, the committee isn't from the farming community. And second of all, it isn't science-based. You go through these modules, there's no citations on any of this stuff. They said in the module that nitrogen is a greenhouse gas. Nitrogen is not a greenhouse gas. Stop fucking doing that shit. And if you want to know the truth about climate change, it's not CO2. It has nothing to do with CO2. Solar forcing? People are just stupid. Okay, so yeah, it's not based in science. I went over the nitrogen thing. Okay, documenting those practices is a tool to show our customers that we're actually growing grains and oilseeds in a responsible manner, said Lenz. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a flying fuck. Lenz was one of the 4 farmers on the committee, which also has reps from... He's not just a farmer, he also is a chair of Alberta Bar. They leave this stuff out because they don't want you to know about it. Like, they just hide all this shit all the time. Which also has reps from industry, academia, and government. Oh, I thought this wasn't... Remember when they said, oh, it's not government-led? But yeah, here we go, government. And was led by Ted Benzies, the former politician, CropLife Canada CEO, they finally admit that, and farm leader from Claresholm. Of how this code got developed is by including the entire grain value chain, right from the farmers to food processors to food distributors to NGOs like Ducks Unlimited Canada, Len says. It's developed for everybody but farmers. But they got everybody involved but the farmers. That's what they've done. I don't expect to agree with everyone on everything, but that's how you get to a well-balanced document, by having all those different perspectives. This document is about as balanced as Trudeau's budget. It's terribly one-sided. It only affects one little group of people, but the group was focused on ensuring the code made sense for producers, which it fucking doesn't, as everybody has put their dismay, but they're still pushing it because they don't give a shit what you think. Some farmers on social media expressed concern about Ducks Unlimited Canada's involvement, but Len said no one pushed any sort of agenda. The entire thing is agenda pushed. You look in some other videos, you can see that. I put that together. What he did was what we all did, try to bring a different perspective to each and every one of these modules that we went over with a fine-tooth comb, said Lands, adding the reps for Ducks Unlimited is also a farmer. They said they only got Ducks Unlimited because nobody else would come on board. That's literally what they said during the meeting. So, desperate. Sometimes we don't all agree with what Ducks Unlimited is doing, but it does do some good. There's no doubt about it. No citation, of course, because nobody gives a shit about science. Even so, Lenz expects some pushback from Canadian farmers on the draft modules. The entire thing is getting pushed back. We spent a lot of time discussing some of them within our committee to try and make it work for the whole country, he said. It was very difficult because there are different provincial regulations that are involved, so we had to meet in the middle on some of them. So he talked about regulations. He didn't even talk about what was good for the farmer. He didn't say, oh, it was tough because we have different soil types, we have different rain, precipitation yearly, we have different weather. No, he says regulations instead, because nobody gives a shit about the farmer. Again, we're trying to cover all crops in all parts of Canada, but we don't know if we've got it right, which is why we have the consultations. Miller added. That's somebody else. Put that in at the end. In-person town hall meetings were scuppered by the pandemic, but farm groups and crop commissions were consulting, and now online consultations are being held. The Sustainable Crops Roundtable is also giving internet presentations on the code on January 27th, 29th. Today's the 29th. Let's see when the article came out. 27th. So they released it the first day. Good heads up. Once that feedback has been compiled, we go back to the code development committee so it can rework the modules if needed. What do you mean if needed? They're garbage. Okay, that's what the consultation is for, to get it out to the general farming public and make sure it makes sense to them too, which means they already think it makes sense to them. They just want to push it to make sure that the farmer, oh, you guys are good with this, right? Nobody is. Nobody likes this. But the code won't require major changes on the farms, he added, which he's totally wrong about. I don't think this guy even read the code, to be quite honest. Farmers are already doing a lot of what's in this program. We're already doing 90 to 95% of the practices in it because they have an environmental or economic benefit to our farms. Why do it? Oh, he'll tell you why. Lyons hopes the code of practice will just raise up that bottom 5 or 10% of farmers who could maybe do a little better job. It's also worthwhile for the grain sector to look and ensure we're all doing the best job possible, he said. So he wants the grain sector to look and make sure that the farmers are doing what they're supposed to do. He wants that. We're pretty confident that we already are, but we just can't keep talking about it amongst ourselves. We need a tool like this to send out to our customers and to the public. No, you fucking don't. This is a useless code, and it's filled with dribble and bullshit. Read the manuals. It's all garbage. All right.